The tanker didn't slow down, it didn't signal, and it didn't ask permission. It headed straight toward one of the most heavily controlled waterways on Earth. And for a few seconds, the entire world was watching the same question unfold in real time. Would the blockade actually be enforced? Or was it just a bluff? Because what happened next didn't just decide the fate of one ship, it exposed something far bigger. If you want real breakdowns like this, not surface-level headlines, make sure you're following now, because what comes next only gets more intense. Within seconds, U.S. naval systems locked in, radar sharpened, tracking stabilized, every movement calculated before it even fully happened. This wasn't routine anymore. This was a live test of power. And then, something unexpected. No missiles, no warning shots, no dramatic standoff. The tanker turned around, immediately. No hesitation, no resistance, just a full reversal, as if the outcome had already been decided before the test even began. But here's the part no one is talking about. It didn't happen once, it happened again and again. 3 separate tankers, 3 separate approaches, 3 identical outcomes. No escalation, no confrontation, just quiet compliance. If you're starting to see the bigger picture here, hit subscribe, because this is where most people miss what's really going on. On the surface, it looked like a failed attempt to cross restricted waters, but that's not what this was. This was a probe, a calculated test of something much more dangerous than a blocked route, the actual limits of power, because a blockade only matters if it works the moment it's challenged. And in this case, it did, instantly, decisively, without a single shot fired. So now the question changes, not what happened, but what forced it to happen so fast. To understand that, you have to zoom out, because those tankers weren't random ships. They were part of a much larger system, one built quietly over years, a system connecting China and Iran through energy, infrastructure, and strategic dependence. China didn't just buy oil, it built pathways around restrictions, invested in ports, created alternative supply chains, and supported networks designed to survive pressure, including something even more difficult to track, a shadow fleet. Tankers moving oil through complex ownership layers, shifting identities, and avoiding detection just enough to keep the system alive. And for years, it worked. Until now. Because what changed wasn't just enforcement, it was control. In a single coordinated move, key export routes were restricted, major ports slowed, critical pathways tightened, and suddenly, oil that was already moving had nowhere to go. Tankers stalled, cargo stranded, billions in infrastructure frozen in place, not destroyed, just neutralized. And if you want to stay ahead of how these global systems actually work under pressure, subscribe now, because what comes next explains why this moment is far from over. So those tankers approached the line for one reason: to find out if the system still worked, if there was still space to move, if pressure meant flexibility or shutdown. And the answer came back in less than 20 minutes. There wasn't space. There was a wall, not visible, not announced, but fully enforced. And that changes everything, because once a boundary like that is proven real, it doesn't just affect ships, it affects decisions. China imports over 10 million barrels of oil every day, and a huge portion of that flows through a single narrow passage. That means this isn't just about one blocked route. It's about a vulnerability, a dependency that can't be ignored anymore. And once that kind of weakness is exposed publicly, it doesn't go away. It gets tested again. So what happens next? That's where the real tension begins, because on paper, China has options. It could challenge the blockade directly, escort ships through, force the issue. But that turns a test into confrontation. And not just any confrontation, one involving 2 nuclear powers in one of the most sensitive regions on Earth. That's not pressure, that's escalation. There's another path, slower, less visible. Apply pressure indirectly, adjust supply chains, shift energy flows, absorb the impact while redistributing it outward. And that's exactly what's happening now. Reduced exports, new import channels, strategic adjustments behind the scenes, not a reaction, a calculation. But even that has limits, because no matter how much you adjust, you can't instantly replace a route that carries such massive volume. And that's the real problem. Time. Short-term pressure versus long-term solutions, because building alternatives takes years, but disruption happens instantly. Meanwhile, on the other side of the equation, the United States has created something even more significant than a blockade: an environment, layered surveillance, constant patrols, overwhelming presence, not designed to react, but to make the outcome of any challenge predictable before it even begins. And that's why those tankers turned, not because they couldn't try, but because trying further it was pointless. And this is where everything connects, because this moment isn't just about ships or oil, it's about a pattern we've seen before: a line drawn, a test made, and a decision taken at the last possible second. History has shown how dangerous that moment can be, because when those decisions go the other way, they don't stay local, they escalate. Right now, that line is holding. But pressure like this doesn't disappear, it evolves, either through negotiation, through escalation, or through long-term transformation of the system itself. And every move from this point forward will be measured against one simple reality: what happens when that line is tested again? Because it will be. And next time, the outcome may not be as quiet.